Have you ever wondered why life feels like a constant push and pull, endless desires, unfulfilled expectations, and an aching sense of what's next? Imagine, for a moment, stepping out of that cycle. What if the secret to lasting peace and happiness isn't about achieving more but about letting go? In this video, we're diving into the art of letting go, a timeless philosophy inspired by the teachings of the Buddha. This isn't about turning away from life or its joys, but about understanding how we can live it fully without being weighed down by unnecessary attachments. How do we embrace the chaos around us and still find balance? How do we release the things that hurt us while holding on to the lessons they bring? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll discover transformative insights that have guided countless people toward inner peace for over 2.500 years. Whether it's dealing with the stress of everyday life, finding purpose amidst distractions, or learning to let go of the past, we've got powerful lessons and relatable examples that might just change the way you see the world and yourself. Before we dive in, if this resonates with you, take a moment to hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from a little peace in their life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you're not just supporting us, you're joining a growing community of people seeking wisdom and personal growth. Let's embark on this journey together. Ready to let go? Let's get started. In the modern world, we often find ourselves caught up in the relentless pursuit of success. Our lives are constantly filled with the pressure to do more, be more, and acquire more. Whether it's through career advancement, personal achievements, or the accumulation of possessions, there is an inherent belief that happiness lies in these external markers of success. Yet, despite this relentless striving, many people still feel a sense of emptiness, dissatisfaction, and discontent. This feeling of frustration arises because, at its core, the pursuit of these external goals does not address the underlying cause of our suffering: the clinging to desires, attachments, and the illusion of a permanent self. The Buddha, in his timeless teachings, offered a radical alternative. The path to peace and enlightenment lies not in acquiring more, but in letting go of everything we cling to. This principle is known as the art of letting go, and it forms the foundation of Buddhist philosophy. At the heart of the Buddha's teachings lies the concept of suffering, or dukkha. Suffering, in this context, is not just physical pain or emotional distress, but a more fundamental, existential condition. According to Buddha, all living beings are bound by the inherent suffering of existence, which is the result of our attachment to things, people, and even our own identities. This suffering is not just a byproduct of bad luck or unfortunate circumstances, but a consequence of the very nature of life itself. The more we cling to things, the more we invite suffering into our lives. This is the first of Buddha's Four Noble Truths, that life, in its essence, is suffering. However, Buddha did not leave us with a mere acknowledgement of suffering as an unavoidable truth. He offered a solution. The second noble truth reveals the cause of suffering: desire and attachment. Our desires, whether they pertain to material wealth, power, love, or even status, are the root causes of the pain we experience. We desire things, not because they inherently provide us with happiness, but because we mistakenly believe that satisfying these desires will bring us lasting fulfillment. But no matter how much we acquire, we find ourselves always wanting more, trapped in a cycle of endless craving. This cycle of desire creates an unquenchable thirst that can never be satisfied, leading to frustration and suffering. The Buddha's solution to this problem lies in the third noble truth: the cessation of suffering is possible. By eliminating desire and attachment, we can end the cycle of suffering and achieve a state of true peace and contentment. But how do we go about eliminating desire? The answer is found in the fourth noble truth, which outlines the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide for living a life that leads to the cessation of suffering. The Eightfold Path is not a linear process, but rather a series of interrelated practices that, when cultivated together, help us achieve liberation from suffering. The first step in this path is right understanding, which involves recognizing the true nature of existence and understanding the impermanence of all things. Everything we experience, from our thoughts and emotions to the material world around us, is in a constant state of flux. This realization helps us understand that nothing is permanent and that clinging to anything is futile. The more we grasp at things, the more we suffer when they inevitably change or slip away. Right understanding also involves understanding the nature of the self. Buddha's concept of non-self, or Anatta, challenges the Western notion of a permanent, fixed self. In Buddha's view, what we call I or me is not a solid, unchanging entity, but rather a collection of fleeting thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations. When we grasp onto this concept of a permanent self, we create the illusion that there is something to protect, something to maintain. This attachment to a fixed sense of identity leads to anxiety, insecurity, and suffering. By recognizing the fluid and impermanent nature of the self, we can begin to loosen our attachment to the idea of me and experience life more freely. The second step in the Eightfold Path is right intention. This refers to the intention to live with compassion, kindness, and generosity, rather than driven by selfish desires or the need for personal gain. It is about shifting our motivations from a desire to attain something for ourselves to a desire to benefit others. This change in intention helps to break the cycle of self-centeredness and creates a foundation for peace and harmony. When we act with genuine compassion, we find that our own suffering lessens, as we are no longer consumed by the need to fulfill our own desires. Right speech, the third step, involves using language that is truthful, kind, and beneficial. Words have immense power. They can heal or harm, inspire or destroy. By speaking truthfully and with kindness, we create positive connections with others and cultivate a peaceful mind. When we speak in ways that are deceitful or hurtful, we perpetuate negative emotions and misunderstandings, reinforcing the very attachments that lead to suffering. Right speech, therefore, is an essential practice for letting go of our desires and attachments, as it helps us communicate authentically and with empathy. The next step, right action, is about living in alignment with our values and principles, acting in ways that are ethical and moral. It is about refraining from actions that cause harm to ourselves or others, and instead cultivating actions that contribute to the well-being of all. Right action helps us practice non-attachment in our everyday lives, as we focus on doing what is right without being attached to the outcomes. Whether in our personal relationships, our work, or our communities, our actions should be guided by a sense of responsibility and compassion, not by a desire for personal gain or recognition. Right livelihood is the fifth step, and it encourages us to choose a way of making a living that does not cause harm to others. This could mean avoiding careers that involve exploiting people, animals, or the environment, and instead pursuing work that contributes to the welfare of society. By aligning our livelihood with our values, we create an environment that supports our spiritual growth and helps us let go of the attachments that bind us to a materialistic view of success. The sixth step, right effort, involves cultivating positive mental states and preventing negative ones from arising. This requires consistent effort to transform our thoughts and emotions, training the mind to let go of destructive patterns and develop qualities like patience, resilience, and mindfulness. Right effort is about recognizing that our mental habits are powerful, and by actively working to transform them, we can free ourselves from the attachments and desires that perpetuate suffering. Right mindfulness is the seventh step, and it refers to being fully present and aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions in each moment. Mindfulness allows us to observe our desires and attachments without getting caught up in them. By cultivating mindfulness, we develop a deeper understanding of the impermanence of life and the fleeting nature of our experiences. This awareness helps us detach from our cravings and attachments, leading to greater peace and freedom. Finally, right concentration is the practice of meditation, which helps us develop a focused and calm mind. Through meditation, we can observe the fluctuations of our thoughts and emotions and learn to let go of them. Meditation is a powerful tool for cultivating non-attachment, as it trains the mind to remain still and peaceful in the face of all distractions. By developing concentration, We learn to observe our desires without acting on them, allowing us to let go of the attachments that cause suffering. Buddhism's core teaching on letting go is ultimately about freedom. It is about freeing ourselves from the attachments that bind us to a world of suffering and dissatisfaction. By letting go of our desires, our attachments, and the illusion of a permanent self, we can experience life more fully and peacefully. This path is not about renouncing life or rejecting the world, but about embracing life as it is, in its impermanent and ever-changing nature. It is about learning to live with grace and acceptance, without clinging to the fleeting pleasures or the inevitable pain that life brings. The art of letting go is not a philosophy that seeks to deny our desires, but rather one that invites us to understand them more deeply and to realize that they are not the source of lasting happiness. When we learn to let go, we find that we can live in the world without being consumed by it. We can enjoy life's pleasures without clinging to them, and face its challenges without being overwhelmed by them. In the end, the art of letting go is not a path of denial, but a path of liberation, a way to live freely, peacefully, and in harmony with the world around us. Siddhartha Gautama's story begins in a world of privilege, where the luxuries of royalty surrounded him from birth. He was the son of King Shuddhodana, a ruler of the Sakya clan in what is now the southern region of Nepal, and Queen Maya. His birth was marked by great auspicious signs, and many believe that Siddhartha would either grow up to be a mighty ruler or a spiritual leader who would change the world. King Shuddhodana, eager for his son to follow in his royal footsteps, ensured that Siddhartha's upbringing was marked by comfort and isolation. The king was determined to shield his son from all suffering, hoping that by keeping Siddhartha away from the outside world, he would grow up unaware of the impermanence of life and the inevitable suffering that comes with it. From an early age, Siddhartha's life was designed to ensure that he would have every material possession and comfort available to him. His palace was a sanctuary from the harsh realities of the world. Siddhartha never witnessed the pain of illness, the struggles of the poor, or the reality of aging and death. His surroundings were intentionally crafted to keep him in a state of perpetual happiness, with every need catered to by servants and attendants. The king believed that by keeping Siddhartha in this protected environment, he would grow up unburdened by the suffering of the world and eventually assume a position of power that would secure the family's legacy. Despite his sheltered life, Siddhartha was not content. His mind was filled with a thirst for understanding, a curiosity that could not be satisfied by the pleasures of his surroundings. He was intrigued by the mysteries of life beyond the palace walls, and as he matured, he began to question the world around him. He often heard whispers of the suffering that people outside the palace experienced, but it wasn't until he ventured out of the palace that he truly understood the nature of life. At the age of 29, Siddhartha's curiosity finally led him to sneak out of the palace and venture into the world for the first time. What Siddhartha encountered on his journey would change the course of his life forever. His first encounter was with an old man, frail and bent with age. Siddhartha, seeing this man for the first time, was struck by the stark contrast between the vibrant youth he had known and the inevitable decay that time brought. He asked his charioteer what the old man's condition was, and the charioteer explained that the man had simply aged. Siddhartha was deeply disturbed by this realization. The palace had protected him from the realities of aging, but now, faced with it for the first time, he realized that age would eventually claim everyone. Siddhartha's next encounter was with a sick man, writhing in pain and weakness. This sight left him shaken. He had never seen illness up close before, as the palace had sheltered him from sickness, and now, he was confronted with the reality that disease and suffering were a part of life. Siddhartha asked his charioteer what was happening, and he was told that this man was suffering from illness, a fate that awaited all living beings. Siddhartha began to feel a deep unease, a growing awareness that his world of comfort and pleasure was, in fact, a fragile illusion. But it was the third encounter that left the deepest impression on him. A funeral procession. Siddhartha saw a body being carried to its final resting place, and with it, the realization hit him that death was inevitable. His sheltered life had never exposed him to the truth that death was a certainty for every living being. For the first time, Siddhartha confronted the reality that death would eventually come for everyone, including himself. This profound realization caused a deep existential crisis. The young prince, who had once lived a life of luxury and ease, now understood the true nature of existence. Aging, sickness, and death were unavoidable aspects of life. These encounters, seeing the old man, the sick man, and the dead body, filled Siddhartha with an overwhelming sense of dread and confusion. He realized that the life he had been living in the palace, surrounded by comforts and luxuries, was not the true reality of life. The world outside was full of suffering, and this suffering was universal. This awareness shook him to his core, and he could no longer remain in the confines of the palace, surrounded by illusions of security and happiness. He felt an urgent need to understand the true nature of life and find a way to end the suffering he had just witnessed. Siddhartha's quest for understanding led him to make a life-changing decision. He left behind his royal life, his family, and the comforts of the palace. He renounced his wealth, his position, and everything he had ever known. This act of renunciation was not one of impulse, but a deep, conscious decision to seek the truth of life and to find a way to overcome suffering. His departure from the palace marked the beginning of his spiritual journey, one that would take him far from his royal roots, into the depths of meditation, asceticism, and ultimately, enlightenment. Siddhartha wandered through India for years, seeking answers to the questions that plagued his mind. He studied with various teachers, practiced extreme forms of asceticism, and subjected his body to great hardship in an attempt to find the answers to his questions. But despite his efforts, he found that neither extreme indulgence in pleasure nor extreme denial of the body could bring him the peace he sought. He began to realize that true liberation could not be found in either extreme, but rather in the middle path, the path of moderation and balance. One day, while meditating under a fig tree, Siddhartha reached a moment of profound insight. Through deep meditation and self-reflection, he realized that the root cause of all suffering lay in attachment and desire. He understood that the more we cling to things, whether material possessions, relationships, or even our own sense of identity, the more we suffer when those things inevitably change or are lost. He also realized that the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara, was driven by ignorance, and that liberation could only be attained by transcending this ignorance through wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. In that moment of insight, Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment and became the Buddha, which means the awakened one. He had discovered the truth about suffering and its cessation, and he had found a way to end the cycle of birth and death. The Buddha then dedicated his life to teaching others the path to liberation, sharing the wisdom he had gained through his own experiences. He traveled across India, offering teachings on the nature of suffering, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, which are the core principles of Buddhism. Siddhartha's life as the Buddha was not about achieving personal glory or fame. Rather, it was about sharing the profound insights he had discovered and helping others free themselves from the cycle of suffering. His teachings continue to resonate with millions of people around the world today, offering a path to peace, liberation, and enlightenment. His journey from a sheltered prince to a spiritual teacher embodies the transformative power of self-discovery and the importance of seeking truth beyond the illusions of material wealth and power. In essence, the story of Siddhartha Gautama is a journey of awakening, a story of a young man who, despite being born into privilege, sought to understand the deeper truths of existence. His life is a powerful reminder that the pursuit of happiness through material wealth and external success is fleeting, and that true peace and fulfillment come from understanding the nature of suffering and learning to let go of attachment. Siddhartha's path to enlightenment is a timeless lesson on the importance of inner peace, wisdom, and compassion, showing that the greatest treasures are not found in possessions or titles, but in the understanding of one's true nature and the ability to live in harmony with the world around us. Siddhartha's life as a prince was marked by a deliberate attempt to shield him from the world's suffering. His father, King Shuddhodana, had constructed an artificial environment within the palace, hoping to keep Siddhartha insulated from the harsh realities of life. The king believed that if Siddhartha was shielded from suffering, he would be inclined to take up the role of a powerful ruler and continue the royal legacy. However, despite his father's best efforts, Siddhartha's insatiable curiosity would eventually lead him to venture beyond the palace walls. This pivotal moment occurred when Siddhartha was 29 years old. Little did he know that what lay outside the palace would completely transform his understanding of life. The first encounter Siddhartha had during his journey was with an elderly person. Siddhartha had lived his life surrounded by youthful beauty, comfort, and the pleasures of youth. So he had never witnessed the effects of aging firsthand. The sight of the frail, bent, and withered body of the elderly person was a shocking revelation for him. In the palace, time seemed to stand still, and age was nothing more than a distant concept. However, when he saw this elderly person, Siddhartha was confronted with the truth that aging is a universal process. As he inquired about the man's condition, his charioteer explained that old age was something that happens to everyone. This encounter triggered a deep reflection in Siddhartha's mind about the inevitability of aging, a stark contrast to the carefree existence he had known in the palace. He began to understand that the human body is subject to decay, no matter how rich or powerful a person may be. This awareness of the impermanence of youth and vitality was Siddhartha's first encounter with the reality of suffering. His second encounter was with a man suffering from a debilitating illness. Again, Siddhartha had been sheltered from the afflictions of sickness in the palace, where he lived in an environment carefully curated to protect him from any form of discomfort. However, in the outside world, Siddhartha saw the stark reality of illness. He saw a man in the throes of pain, weak and helpless, and was struck by the cruel reality that sickness is an inevitable part of the human experience. When Siddhartha inquired about the man's condition, his charioteer informed him that the man was suffering from a disease. Siddhartha began to realize that illness is something that can strike anyone at any time, regardless of social status, wealth, or power. This encounter deepened Siddhartha's understanding of the fragility of life and added to his growing awareness of the suffering that exists in the world. The third encounter Siddhartha had was perhaps the most profound and unsettling. He witnessed a funeral procession. The sight of a dead body being carried to its final resting place shattered Siddhartha's previous notions of invulnerability. Until this moment, he had lived in a bubble, protected from the harsh truth that death is an inevitable part of life. In the palace, death was a distant concept, something he had never encountered personally. But now, in the outside world, he was confronted with the stark reality that death comes for everyone, without exception. Siddhartha was deeply moved by the sight of the dead body, and when he asked his charioteer about the nature of death, he was told that death is the ultimate truth for all beings. This encounter was a defining moment for Siddhartha. It forced him to acknowledge that no matter how much one might try to evade it, death is an inescapable reality that all living beings must face. While the first three encounters exposed Siddhartha to the harsh realities of aging, sickness, and death, it was his fourth encounter that truly ignited his spiritual quest. This encounter was with a wandering ascetic, a man who had renounced worldly attachments and found inner peace despite the suffering of the world. This holy man was calm, serene, and detached from the material world. Siddhartha, struck by the man's tranquility, was deeply intrigued by how someone could find peace in the midst of the inevitable suffering that all humans must endure. Siddhartha asked the ascetic about his way of life, and the holy man explained that his peace came from renouncing all attachments and desires, and by seeking enlightenment through meditation and self-discipline. This encounter marked the turning point in Siddhartha's journey. For the first time, he realized that there was a path beyond worldly pleasures and suffering, a path that could lead to peace and liberation. These four encounters, seeing the old man, the sick man, the dead body, and the holy man, shattered Siddhartha's sheltered worldview and ignited a deep inner turmoil. Siddhartha realized that life is marked by suffering, and that no matter how much wealth or status one may have, these fundamental truths cannot be escaped. Aging, sickness, and death are inescapable. And the only way to transcend suffering is to understand its causes and find a way to overcome them. Siddhartha began to see the fragility of human existence and the futility of clinging to material possessions, power, or pleasure as a means of avoiding suffering. These realizations led him to renounce his royal life and embark on a spiritual journey in search of a deeper truth. The significance of these four encounters goes beyond Siddhartha's personal awakening. They illustrate a universal truth about the nature of human life. Every person, regardless of their background or status, will inevitably face the challenges of aging, illness, and death. These experiences are part of the human condition, and they remind us of the impermanence of life. Siddhartha's encounters with the elderly man, the sick man, the dead body, and the ascetic are symbolic of the universal experiences that all people must face in their lifetime. They are reminders that no one can escape the realities of suffering, and that true peace and happiness cannot be found in the fleeting pleasures of the material world. These encounters also highlight the importance of seeking a deeper understanding of life. While the world may offer us comforts and distractions, these do not offer lasting fulfillment or liberation from suffering. Siddhartha's encounters with suffering led him to realize that the path to true peace lies not in avoiding suffering, but in understanding it and transcending it. The holy man he encountered showed him that peace is not found in the external world, but within oneself. This realization became the foundation of Siddhartha's spiritual journey, and it is what ultimately led him to attain enlightenment and become the Buddha. In today's world, we can relate to Siddhartha's experiences in many ways. We live in a society that often values material success, wealth, and power, and many people strive for these things in the hope that they will bring happiness and fulfillment. However, just as Siddhartha learned through his encounters, we too can face the harsh reality that these things are impermanent. Illness, aging, and death are realities that everyone must confront. The pursuit of external success alone cannot protect us from these inevitable aspects of life. Instead, true peace and fulfillment come from understanding the transient nature of life and learning to let go of attachment to the things that cannot provide lasting happiness. In the face of these inevitable truths, the story of Siddhartha offers us a powerful lesson. It teaches us that we do not need to run from suffering, but rather to face it with awareness and wisdom. By doing so, we can find a path to liberation and peace, just as Siddhartha did. The journey toward enlightenment is not one that avoids suffering, but one that seeks to understand its causes and find a way to transcend it. Through his four encounters, Siddhartha discovered the path that would lead him to the ultimate freedom from suffering, and his journey continues to inspire millions around the world to seek a deeper understanding of life and to live with compassion, wisdom, and peace. Siddhartha's journey toward enlightenment was not a straightforward path. After his encounters with the realities of aging, illness, death, and the peaceful ascetic, he became deeply disturbed by the nature of human existence and its inherent suffering. He was determined to find a solution, a way to transcend the pain and impermanence that he had witnessed. The intensity of his inner turmoil propelled him to seek out various spiritual practices in an attempt to find a way to end suffering. In his search for answers, Siddhartha encountered a range of spiritual leaders and philosophies. As a prince who had been sheltered from the suffering of the world, he was now exposed to the broader spectrum of human beliefs and practices. His first attempt to find a solution led him down the path of asceticism, a practice of extreme self-denial that was popular among certain religious traditions at the time. Asceticism involves the rejection of physical comforts and indulgences in order to purify the mind and body, and ultimately achieve spiritual enlightenment. For Siddhartha, this seemed like the logical route. If the material world was a source of suffering, perhaps detaching himself completely from it would lead to peace. Determined to rid himself of all attachment, Siddhartha subjected himself to extreme fasting and physical torment. His days became a blur of self-denial, as he ate very little and subjected his body to harsh conditions. He would often spend long hours meditating, trying to conquer his desires, and pushing his body beyond its limits. He believed that by depriving himself of the necessities of life, he would be able to purify himself and gain the spiritual insight he sought. For months, he endured hunger, fatigue, and pain, all in the hope of achieving enlightenment. However, despite his intense efforts, Siddhartha found no peace. In fact, he began to experience more suffering, both physically and mentally. His body became emaciated, and his mind was clouded by hunger and exhaustion. The more he tortured himself, the further away enlightenment seemed. The ascetic path, which he had initially believed would bring him clarity, only seemed to deepen his suffering. He realized that self-deprivation had not brought him closer to the truth. It had only created more pain. In a moment of deep reflection, Siddhartha came to a powerful realization. He understood that asceticism, like indulgence in worldly pleasures, was an extreme response to suffering. Both extremes, excessive indulgence in sensory pleasures and excessive self-denial, were not the solutions to life's inherent suffering. Instead, they were part of the cycle of attachment and aversion that caused suffering in the first place. Siddhartha came to the conclusion that true peace could not be found in extremes, but in a balanced, moderate approach to life. This realization led him to adopt what would later become known as the middle way. The middle way was a path of moderation, avoiding both the excesses of indulgence and the harshness of asceticism. Siddhartha understood that the body needed nourishment and care to function properly, and that extreme deprivation only hindered the mind's ability to achieve clarity. He decided to eat again, but without indulgence, and to care for his body while maintaining his focus on his spiritual practice. The middle way was a path that recognized the interconnectedness of body and mind, and the need for balance in both. Siddhartha's new approach was not one of extreme indulgence or extreme deprivation, but one of thoughtful moderation and self-awareness. This shift in Siddhartha's approach to life was not only a physical change, it was a profound transformation in his understanding of the nature of suffering. He recognized that suffering did not arise from the mere presence of discomfort, but from attachment to desires and aversions. The cycle of craving and clinging was what kept him trapped in the cycle of suffering. Whether he was indulging in worldly pleasures or depriving himself of basic needs, true freedom could only come when one transcended this cycle and found peace in the present moment, without attachment to any particular outcome. As Siddhartha resumed eating and took better care of his body, he also deepened his meditation practice. He focused not on the extremes of indulgence or denial, but on cultivating a deep awareness of the present moment. He began to meditate with greater clarity, concentrating on his breath and observing the thoughts that arose in his mind. Through this practice, Siddhartha began to see the true nature of his own mind, the way it clung to desires, fears, and attachments. He saw how these attachments fueled his suffering, and he began to understand that the root cause of suffering was not external circumstances, but the internal cravings and aversions that shaped his thoughts and actions. In time, Siddhartha's meditation practice deepened to the point where he experienced a profound insight into the nature of existence. He realized that everything in life is impermanent, and that the pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain are futile attempts to escape the truth of existence. He understood that all beings are subject to the laws of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and that suffering arises when we try to hold on to things that are temporary and ever-changing. The solution to suffering, he realized, was not to escape it, but to understand it and embrace the impermanence of life. This moment of insight, which came after Siddhartha adopted the middle way, marked the beginning of his path to enlightenment. It was through meditation and deep self-awareness that Siddhartha was able to see the true nature of his mind and the world around him. He realized that the answer to suffering was not found in external practices or rituals, but in the cultivation of wisdom, mindfulness, and compassion. The middle way, with its emphasis on balance and awareness, became the foundation of his teachings, which would later form the core of Buddhism. Siddhartha's journey towards enlightenment is a powerful reminder that the path to peace is not always linear or easy. Like many people, Siddhartha struggled with the extremes of life on one hand, the pursuit of pleasure, and, on the other, the rejection of pleasure through asceticism. Both extremes proved to be unsatisfactory, as they only created more suffering. The key to overcoming suffering, Siddhartha discovered was not in rejecting the world or denying the body, but in cultivating a balanced, mindful approach to life. His realization that the middle way is the path to true peace resonates with many people today who seek meaning and fulfillment in an often chaotic world. In modern terms, we can relate to Siddhartha's journey through our own struggles with balance. We live in a society that often pressures us to either overindulge or deprive ourselves in various aspects of life. Whether through consumerism, workaholism, or dieting trends, the message of the middle way is relevant today more than ever, finding balance between work and leisure, consumption and conservation, indulgence and self-restraint. In a world that often swings between extremes, Siddhartha's discovery that neither indulgence nor deprivation brings lasting happiness serves as a reminder that true peace comes from living mindfully and moderating our desires. The middle way offers a practical guide for finding peace in a world that is full of distractions, desires, and pressures. By following a path of moderation, we can avoid the extremes of indulgence and deprivation and cultivate a sense of peace and balance in our lives. Ultimately, Siddhartha's experience with asceticism and the discovery of the middle way led him to a deeper understanding of the nature of suffering and the path to enlightenment. His journey serves as a timeless guide for those who seek freedom from suffering, and his teachings continue to inspire millions around the world to find balance, mindfulness, and peace in their own lives. As Siddhartha sat beneath the Bodhi tree, a sense of calm enveloped him. The soft wind rustled through the leaves, but his mind was still, like the surface of a pond on a windless day. For the first time, there was no struggle within him, no questions, no doubts, only an expansive clarity. He had been meditating for days, his body weary and his mind focused solely on understanding the root causes of suffering. At that moment, Siddhartha attained what would become the cornerstone of his life's work, the moment of enlightenment. Enlightenment, or nirvana, is often described as the ultimate realization of truth, where the veil of illusion is lifted, and one sees the world as it truly is. In Siddhartha's case, it was the understanding of the nature of suffering, its causes, and the way to transcend it. He saw how all beings, including himself, were bound by the same cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and how these cycles of existence brought suffering. This revelation wasn't simply an intellectual understanding but a deep, experiential awareness that cut through the layers of illusion he had carried with him for so long. In that moment, under the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha's understanding crystallized, and he became the Buddha, the awakened one. He had attained the ultimate truth and the answers to the questions that had plagued him for years. This experience did not just transform him, it also gave rise to the core teachings of Buddhism, which would spread across the world and continue to offer a path to liberation for millions. The core of Buddha's teachings can be distilled into what are known as the Four Noble Truths. These truths are not mere philosophical abstractions. They are practical guidelines for understanding life and ultimately ending suffering. They provide a roadmap for anyone seeking a way out of the cycles of craving and suffering that dominate human existence. The first truth, life is suffering, dukkha, is a recognition of the fundamental nature of existence. Buddha did not sugarcoat the reality of life. He did not claim that life is a smooth, pleasant journey where happiness and peace are guaranteed. Instead, he acknowledged that all beings, whether rich or poor, powerful or weak, experience suffering. This suffering manifests in various forms: physical pain, emotional distress, loss, disappointment, and the inevitable aging and death that await us all. It is an inescapable aspect of life. From the moment we are born, we begin a journey toward death, and in between, we face a series of challenges, heartaches, and inevitable changes. Buddha's acknowledgement of suffering was not a pessimistic view of life, but an honest one. It was his way of urging people to see life clearly, to face the truth of human existence rather than hide from it or try to deny it. The first noble truth is not meant to depress, but to awaken. It calls us to confront the reality of suffering, because only by understanding its nature can we begin to work toward its cessation. The second noble truth, suffering is caused by desire, tanha, takes this understanding one step further. Buddha explained that suffering is not random or senseless. It arises from a very specific cause, desire. More precisely, it is our attachment to desires, the craving for things, experiences, or relationships that leads to suffering. This attachment can take many forms: the desire for wealth, fame, pleasure, security, love, or even the avoidance of discomfort and pain. We crave these things because we believe they will bring us lasting happiness and fulfillment. But Buddha's insight was that these desires are inherently flawed because they are impermanent. Things, people, and experiences that we attach to will change, decay, or be lost to us. And in that loss, we find suffering. For example, many people attach their sense of self-worth to their career success. They may believe that if they achieve a certain position or salary, they will be happy and fulfilled. But the reality is, no matter how much success one achieves, it never brings lasting contentment. At best, it brings temporary satisfaction, but the craving for more never ends. Eventually, that success might fade, and with it, the sense of happiness. Buddha's second truth teaches us that this constant craving for things that cannot last is the root cause of our pain and dissatisfaction. The third noble truth: suffering can be ended. Nirvana offers hope. If suffering arises from desire, then logically, the cessation of suffering must lie in the cessation of desire. This is not to say that desire is inherently bad. It is natural to have desires, to wish for happiness, or to seek love and fulfillment. But Buddha teaches that the problem arises when we cling to those desires, when we believe that they are the only source of happiness. The third truth shows that by letting go of attachment to our desires, we can free ourselves from suffering. Nirvana, the ultimate goal in Buddhism, is not a place or a state of passive existence. It is the extinguishing of the flame of craving and attachment. It is a state of profound peace, freedom, and clarity. It is a liberation from the endless cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. In this state, there is no longer any fear of loss, because one is no longer attached to anything. The Buddha's teachings on nirvana encourage us to find peace by letting go of our tight grip on things that are transient and impermanent. When we let go of our attachments, we create the space for true peace and freedom to emerge. The fourth noble truth: the path to ending suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path, outlines the practical steps that lead to the cessation of suffering. It is not enough simply to understand the nature of suffering and its causes. Buddha's teachings offer a pathway to live, an act that will lead to liberation. The Noble Eightfold Path is composed of 8 interconnected practices that guide individuals toward wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. The Eightfold Path is divided into 3 core components: wisdom, right view, and right intention; ethical conduct, right speech, right action, and right livelihood; and mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Each of these elements is essential in cultivating a balanced and mindful approach to life. Right view involves seeing the world as it truly is, understanding the 4 noble truths, and recognizing the impermanence of all things. It is about perceiving the nature of suffering and the causes of suffering and developing the wisdom to understand how we can transcend these limitations. Right intention is about cultivating an attitude of kindness, compassion, and non-attachment. It involves letting go of harmful intentions, such as greed, hatred, and ignorance, and replacing them with the desire to act in ways that benefit all beings. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood guide ethical conduct. These practices encourage honesty, integrity, and respect for all beings. Right speech involves refraining from lying, gossiping, or speaking in a harmful way. Right action involves behaving in ways that are harmless to others, following ethical guidelines like not killing or stealing. Right livelihood encourages choosing a profession or occupation that does not cause harm to others. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are the mental disciplines that help cultivate focus and awareness. Right effort involves cultivating positive mental states, such as compassion and wisdom, and letting go of negative ones, such as anger and attachment. Right mindfulness is about developing a heightened awareness of the present moment, observing one's thoughts, feelings, and actions without attachment or judgment. Right concentration involves training the mind to focus and develop deep states of meditation, where clarity and insight emerge. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a linear progression, but a holistic framework that encompasses all aspects of life. It is not about achieving perfection in one area at the expense of others, but about cultivating balance in all aspects of our lives, our thoughts, actions, speech, and mindfulness. By following this path, we can gradually transform our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, leading to the end of suffering and the attainment of nirvana. Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree marked the beginning of a new era in spiritual thought. His teachings provided a clear, practical path for those seeking freedom from suffering. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path offer a timeless blueprint for living a life of wisdom, compassion, and inner peace. Today, his teachings continue to resonate with people around the world, offering a way to navigate the challenges of modern life and find lasting happiness. Through mindfulness, meditation, and a commitment to ethical conduct, individuals can cultivate the inner peace and clarity that Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. The concept of non-self, or Anatta, is one of the most profound and revolutionary teachings of Buddhism. It challenges the deeply ingrained belief in a permanent, independent self, a belief that underpins much of human behavior, thought, and suffering. According to the Buddha, what we perceive as the self is not a fixed entity, but rather an ever-changing interplay of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions, just as waves rise and fall in the ocean. The components of what we call self are constantly in flux, never remaining the same from one moment to the next. The idea of anatta can seem counterintuitive at first. Most people identify strongly with their sense of self. This I, or me, feels like the core of our existence, the one constant amid the changing circumstances of life. We define ourselves through our relationships, careers, possessions, and even our memories and aspirations. However, the Buddha teaches that clinging to this notion of a permanent self is an illusion. This illusion is not harmless. It is, in fact, one of the primary causes of human suffering. Imagine someone who ties their sense of identity to their career. If they succeed, they feel validated and worthy. But if they fail, they may experience intense feelings of inadequacy and despair. This is because their sense of self-worth is bound to something impermanent, their job. Careers can change, end, or evolve in unexpected ways. And when they do, the illusion of a stable self tied to that career is shattered. This example illustrates how clinging to the idea of a fixed self leads to suffering. The Buddha's teaching of non-self helps us understand that there is no self to preserve, protect, or perfect. Instead, what we experience as self is a collection of 5 aggregates, or skandhas, which include form, our physical body; sensations, our feelings of pleasure, pain, or neutrality; perceptions, our ability to recognize and interpret sensory input; mental formations, our thoughts, emotions, and volitions; and consciousness, our awareness of the world. These aggregates interact and change continuously, giving rise to the illusion of a cohesive self. However, just as a river is not a static entity but a flow of water, the self is not a static entity but a flow of experiences. Understanding anatta allows us to let go of the constant striving to preserve or enhance the self. For example, people often go to great lengths to maintain their appearance, believing that their physical form is an essential part of their identity. They may spend hours at the gym, undergo cosmetic procedures, or invest in expensive clothing to project a specific image. While there is nothing inherently wrong with taking care of oneself, the underlying motivation often stems from attachment to the illusion of a permanent, desirable self. The truth is, no matter how much effort is invested, the body will age, change, and eventually perish. Recognizing this impermanence helps reduce the suffering that comes from trying to hold onto something that is destined to change. Another common example is the way people cling to their thoughts and emotions as if they define who they are. When someone experiences anger, they might think, "I am an angry person." This identification with the emotion can lead to guilt, shame, or a sense of being stuck in a particular state. However, When viewed through the lens of anatta, anger is not an intrinsic part of the self. It is a transient mental formation that arises and passes away. By observing anger as an impermanent phenomenon rather than a fixed aspect of identity, one can let it go more easily, reducing the suffering it causes. The practical application of anatta is transformative. It invites us to live with greater freedom and ease by loosening the grip of ego and attachment. When we no longer feel compelled to defend or enhance the self, we can approach life with more openness and compassion. For instance, in relationships, people often experience conflict because they feel their ego is threatened. They might insist on being right, seek validation, or fear rejection because their sense of self is tied to how others perceive them. By understanding that there is no fixed self to defend, they can let go of the need to win arguments or seek constant approval. This leads to healthier, more harmonious relationships. Anatta also has profound implications for how we approach success and failure. In a culture that often equates self-worth with achievement, failure can feel like a personal catastrophe. However, from the perspective of non-self, failure is not a reflection of a flawed me, but simply a result of causes and conditions coming together in a particular way. This understanding allows us to learn from failure without attaching it to our identity, making it easier to move forward with resilience. Even the pursuit of happiness is transformed by the realization of non-self. Many people spend their lives chasing experiences, possessions, or accomplishments that they believe will bring lasting happiness. Yet, these pursuits often lead to disappointment because they are rooted in the illusion that external circumstances can satisfy the self. When we see that the self is an illusion, we can let go of this futile quest and instead focus on cultivating inner peace and contentment. True happiness arises not from satisfying the self, but from transcending it. Meditation is a powerful tool for realizing anatta. Through mindfulness practice, we can observe the impermanence of our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. For example, during meditation, one might notice a thought arise, linger for a moment, and then fade away. This simple observation reveals the transient nature of the mind's contents and helps dismantle the illusion of a permanent self. Over time, this awareness extends beyond the meditation cushion and into daily life, allowing us to navigate challenges with greater equanimity. The concept of anatta does not mean that we lose our individuality or become indifferent to life. On the contrary, it frees us to live more authentically. When we are no longer bound by the need to protect or enhance the self, we can act with greater compassion, creativity, and spontaneity. We are no longer driven by fear, insecurity, or the need for validation. Instead, we can respond to life with clarity and wisdom, grounded in the understanding that everything is interconnected and impermanent. Anatta is a profound teaching that challenges us to rethink our most basic assumptions about who we are. It invites us to let go of the illusion of a fixed, permanent self and embrace the truth of impermanence and interdependence. By doing so, we can free ourselves from the suffering that arises from attachment and live with greater peace, freedom, and compassion. While the idea of non-self may seem abstract or challenging at first, its practical application can transform every aspect of our lives, from how we view ourselves to how we relate to others and the world around us. This is the heart of the Buddha's teaching, not to deny the self, but to see through its illusion and discover the boundless freedom that lies beyond. The Middle Way, one of Buddha's most profound teachings, offers a timeless approach to life that emphasizes balance and moderation over extremes. Rooted in Buddha's personal journey, this philosophy emerged after years of his experimentation with both luxury and deprivation. His insight was simple yet revolutionary. Neither indulgence in sensory pleasures nor extreme asceticism leads to liberation. Instead, the middle way charts a path that avoids these extremes, cultivating harmony and wisdom to achieve enlightenment and freedom from suffering. Before discovering the middle way, Buddha experienced both ends of the spectrum. Born into royalty, Siddhartha Gautama was raised in an environment of opulence and excess, shielded from life's harsh realities. His father's intention was to make his life so pleasurable that he would have no desire to seek anything beyond the material world. However, this luxurious existence left him dissatisfied. as it offered no answers to the profound questions about life and suffering that troubled him. When he left the palace and witnessed the realities of sickness, aging, and death, he turned away from indulgence entirely and sought answers through asceticism. As an ascetic, Buddha deprived himself of even the most basic necessities, enduring severe fasting and physical hardship in his pursuit of spiritual awakening. He believed that renouncing all worldly pleasures and subjecting his body to extreme discipline would purify his mind and lead to enlightenment. However, after years of self-inflicted suffering, he found that this approach brought him no closer to liberation. On the contrary, his physical and mental health deteriorated, leaving him weak and unable to think clearly. It was then that he realized the futility of extremes and embraced a balanced approach, which he called the middle way. The middle way teaches that life's challenges cannot be overcome by clinging to either extreme indulgence or self-denial. For example, in modern terms, consider the way people approach food and health. On one end of the spectrum, overindulgence in unhealthy foods can lead to obesity and related health problems, while on the other end, extreme dieting or fasting can harm the body and create an unhealthy relationship with food. The middle way would advocate for a balanced diet, one that nourishes the body without excess or deprivation. This principle applies not only to physical health, but to every aspect of life. Another relatable example is the pursuit of success. Some people immerse themselves entirely in their careers, working long hours and sacrificing their personal lives in the belief that professional achievement will bring them happiness. Others may take the opposite approach, avoiding work altogether and indulging in leisure activities, leading to a lack of purpose and fulfillment. The middle way offers a solution by encouraging a balanced approach, dedicating time and effort to work while also prioritizing personal relationships, rest, and self-care. This balance allows for both productivity and a meaningful, well-rounded life. The essence of the middle way is not simply about compromise, but about cultivating mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. It requires us to examine our actions, thoughts, and choices carefully and to avoid the pitfalls of excess or deficiency. For instance, when engaging in relationships, some people may become overly attached, placing all their happiness and self-worth in another person. This can lead to emotional dependency and suffering if the relationship ends. Conversely, others may avoid deep connections altogether, fearing vulnerability or loss. The middle way encourages us to engage in relationships with mindfulness and compassion, forming meaningful connections without losing ourselves in attachment or withdrawing into isolation. This philosophy is also deeply relevant to how we approach emotional well-being. In the face of negative emotions like anger, fear, or sadness, some people may suppress these feelings, pretending they do not exist, while others may become consumed by them, allowing these emotions to dictate their actions and decisions. The middle way teaches us to acknowledge and accept our emotions without judgment, neither repressing nor indulging in them. By practicing mindfulness, we can observe these emotions as they arise, understanding their transient nature and responding to them with clarity and wisdom. Buddha also emphasized the importance of the middle way in spiritual practice. He taught that spiritual progress does not come from extreme asceticism or blind devotion to rituals, but from consistent, mindful practice rooted in balance and intention. This is evident in the Noble Eightfold Path, which serves as a practical guide to the middle way. Each step of the path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration reflects the principles of balance and moderation. Together, they offer a comprehensive approach to living ethically, cultivating inner peace, and developing insight. For example, right effort emphasizes avoiding both laziness and overexertion in one's spiritual and personal endeavors. If we push ourselves too hard, we risk burnout and frustration. But if we are too passive, we may stagnate and fail to grow. The middle way encourages a steady, sustainable effort that aligns with our values and capacities. Similarly, right mindfulness advocates for being present and fully engaged in each moment without becoming overly attached to our thoughts or overly detached from our experiences. This balanced approach helps us navigate life with greater awareness and equanimity. The middle way is particularly relevant in today's world, where people often feel pulled in opposing directions by societal pressures. Modern culture frequently glorifies excess, whether it's through material consumption, social media validation, or the relentless pursuit of success. At the same time, there is a growing movement toward minimalism and detachment, which, if taken to extremes, can become another form of rigidity. The middle way offers an antidote to these extremes, reminding us that true contentment lies not in rejecting or clinging to the world but in engaging with it mindfully and with balance. Consider the example of technology use. On one hand, excessive reliance on technology can lead to issues like screen addiction, reduced attention spans, and social isolation. On the other hand, completely avoiding technology in a digitally connected world can hinder communication, access to information, and opportunities for personal and professional growth. The middle way suggests using technology mindfully, leveraging its benefits while setting healthy boundaries to avoid overuse. The philosophy of the middle way extends beyond individual choices to societal and global issues. For instance, in addressing environmental challenges, extremes like unchecked industrialization or radical rejection of modern conveniences are unlikely to provide sustainable solutions. Instead, the middle way advocates for thoughtful, balanced approaches that prioritize both environmental preservation and human development. This perspective encourages innovation and compromise, fostering harmony between progress and sustainability. At its core, the middle way is about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things and understanding that balance is essential for harmony. It invites us to approach life with humility and self-awareness, recognizing that extremes often arise from attachment, whether to pleasure, comfort, or ideals. By letting go of these attachments and embracing moderation, we can cultivate a sense of inner peace and resilience. The middle way is not a static state but a dynamic process of adjustment and mindfulness. It requires us to remain attentive to our choices and their impact on ourselves and others, continuously seeking balance as circumstances change. This adaptability is what makes the middle way so practical and applicable across cultures, times, and contexts. It is not a rigid doctrine but a guiding principle that can help us navigate the complexities of life with wisdom and compassion. Buddha's teaching of the middle way is a timeless reminder that balance is the key to living a fulfilling and harmonious life. Whether applied to personal habits, relationships, emotional well-being, or global challenges, this philosophy offers a path of clarity and peace. By avoiding extremes and embracing moderation, we can cultivate a life that is not only meaningful but also aligned with the deeper truths of existence. The middle way invites us to walk a path of balance, guided by mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, toward a life of lasting fulfillment and inner freedom. Buddha's teachings, though rooted in ancient wisdom, remain remarkably applicable to the complexities of modern life. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions are abundant and stress levels are high, these teachings offer timeless strategies for finding balance, peace, and fulfillment. The essence of these teachings lies in understanding how to navigate the challenges of life without being overwhelmed by them, and they provide practical tools to cultivate a sense of inner stability and joy. One of the most transformative aspects of Buddha's teachings is the practice of letting go of attachments. In contemporary society, people often tie their sense of self-worth and happiness to external factors such as possessions, career success, or social status. Advertisements and social media constantly feed the narrative that owning the latest gadget, achieving a certain level of fame, or reaching a specific milestone will bring lasting happiness. However, this relentless pursuit often leaves people feeling anxious, dissatisfied, and disconnected. Buddha's teaching on non-attachment does not mean giving up all possessions or ambitions. Rather, it is about not allowing these things to define one's happiness or sense of identity. For example, imagine someone who has spent years working toward a promotion at work. If their happiness is entirely tied to getting that promotion, they may feel devastated if they are passed over. But if they practice non-attachment, they can still strive for success while maintaining a sense of inner peace regardless of the outcome. This perspective allows them to enjoy the process of growth and learning rather than being consumed by the fear of failure or the need for validation. Non-attachment also applies to relationships. Many people struggle with feelings of jealousy, possessiveness, or fear of loss in their personal connections. These emotions often arise from clinging to the idea that another person is the source of their happiness. However, relationships built on attachment can become a source of stress and conflict. Practicing non-attachment in relationships means loving others freely without trying to control or possess them. It allows for deeper, more meaningful connections because it is based on mutual respect and acceptance rather than fear or dependency. Another critical teaching that resonates deeply with modern life is mindfulness. In an age dominated by constant notifications, multitasking, and a culture that glorifies busyness, mindfulness offers a powerful antidote. To be mindful is to be fully present in the moment, aware of one's thoughts, feelings, and surroundings without judgment. It is about embracing the richness of the now, rather than being preoccupied with regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. Mindfulness has profound implications for reducing stress and enhancing well-being. For instance, many people feel overwhelmed by their to-do lists, juggling work deadlines, family responsibilities, and personal goals. When approached mindlessly, this constant rush can lead to burnout and a sense of never being fully present for any one task. However, by cultivating mindfulness, even mundane activities like washing dishes or commuting to work can become opportunities for calm and clarity. Instead of rushing through these moments, one can focus on the sensations, sounds, and experiences in the present, turning them into moments of peace rather than stress. Mindfulness is particularly beneficial in managing emotions. Modern life often brings about situations that provoke frustration, anger, or sadness. Without mindfulness, these emotions can spiral out of control, leading to impulsive actions or prolonged distress. For example, if someone receives criticism at work, they might immediately react defensively or harbor resentment. Practicing mindfulness in such situations allows them to pause, observe their emotional response, and choose a thoughtful way to respond. This approach not only reduces emotional reactivity but also fosters better communication and problem-solving. The practice of mindfulness extends to relationships as well. In today's hyper-connected world, people often find themselves distracted even during face-to-face interactions. Checking phones during conversations or thinking about work while spending time with loved ones has become commonplace. This lack of presence can erode the quality of relationships over time. By practicing mindfulness, individuals can give their full attention to their interactions, fostering deeper connections and understanding. Simple acts, like truly listening to a friend's concerns or savoring a shared meal, can become moments of genuine intimacy and joy. Mindfulness is not just about individual well-being. It also has broader implications for how people engage with the world. For example, mindful consumption can help address the environmental and ethical challenges of modern society. By being mindful of what they buy, how much they consume, and the impact of their choices on the planet, individuals can make more responsible decisions. This practice aligns with the principle of non-attachment, as it encourages people to focus on their true needs rather than being driven by material desires. The application of mindfulness can also transform workplaces. In high-pressure environments where stress and competition are prevalent, mindfulness can create a more compassionate and collaborative culture. Leaders who practice mindfulness are better equipped to make thoughtful decisions, empathize with their teams, and foster an environment where employees feel valued. Similarly, employees who approach their tasks mindfully are more likely to find satisfaction in their work, improve their focus, and navigate challenges with resilience. Buddha's teachings also emphasize the importance of finding joy in simplicity. In modern life, people often equate happiness with big achievements or extraordinary experiences, overlooking the beauty of ordinary moments. For example, the warmth of sunlight streaming through a window, the sound of birds chirping in the morning, or the aroma of a freshly brewed cup of coffee can bring immense joy when noticed mindfully. These small, everyday moments hold the potential for deep contentment, but they are often missed when people are caught up in their routines or distracted by their devices. A practical way to integrate these teachings into daily life is through meditation. Meditation provides a structured way to cultivate mindfulness and let go of attachments. Even a few minutes of daily meditation can create a profound shift in one's mindset. For instance, focusing on the breath during meditation helps anchor the mind in the present moment, reducing the mental chatter that often fuels stress and anxiety. Over time, this practice builds the capacity to remain present and calm, even in the face of challenges. Another accessible practice is gratitude. In a culture that often highlights what is lacking, whether it's material possessions, accomplishments, or social approval, gratitude helps shift focus to what is already present and fulfilling. For example, taking a moment each day to reflect on things to be grateful for, such as good health, supportive relationships, or even simple comforts like a warm meal, can cultivate a sense of abundance and contentment. Gratitude aligns with the principle of non-attachment by encouraging appreciation for what exists in the present, rather than constantly striving for more. The relevance of Buddhist teachings in modern life lies in their ability to address universal human challenges. Whether it's the anxiety of living in a fast-paced world, the pressure to achieve and accumulate, or the struggle to balance relationships and responsibilities, these teachings provide a roadmap to navigate life with greater clarity and peace. By letting go of attachments, practicing mindfulness, and finding joy in simplicity, individuals can cultivate a sense of inner stability that is not dependent on external circumstances. Ultimately, these teachings remind us that true happiness and fulfillment come not from chasing after fleeting pleasures or avoiding discomfort, but from embracing life as it is, with all its imperfections and uncertainties. By incorporating these principles into everyday life, we can transform how we experience the world, finding peace and contentment even amidst the challenges of modern existence. The stories from Buddha's life serve as timeless lessons, offering wisdom and guidance on how to navigate the complexities of human existence. These narratives are not just historical accounts. They are metaphors for the challenges we all face and the transformative power of compassion, mindfulness, and understanding. Two of the most profound stories, those of Angulimala and the parable of the mustard seed, encapsulate key Buddhist teachings and demonstrate their relevance in real-world contexts. Angulimala's story is one of profound redemption and transformation. Angulimala was a notorious bandit, feared by all for his violent ways. His name, meaning garland of fingers, came from the gruesome necklace of severed fingers he wore as trophies from his victims. He was consumed by hatred and violence, living a life of destruction that seemed beyond redemption. However, his encounter with the Buddha marked a turning point. One day, as Angulimala roamed the countryside, he saw the Buddha walking calmly along the path. Intrigued by the Buddha's serene demeanor, Angulimala approached him with the intent to harm. But instead of reacting with fear or anger, the Buddha addressed him with compassion. The Buddha's words were simple yet powerful. "I have stopped. Angulimala, when will you stop?" These words pierced through Angulimala's hardened heart, prompting him to reflect on his actions and their consequences. Moved by the Buddha's fearlessness and compassion, Angulimala renounced his violent ways and chose to follow the Buddha's teachings. Through the practice of mindfulness and meditation, Angulimala transformed his life. He let go of his anger and hatred, dedicating himself to a path of peace and compassion. Eventually, he achieved enlightenment, proving that even the most seemingly irredeemable person can change. This story carries a powerful message. No matter how far someone has fallen, redemption is always possible through mindfulness, self-reflection, and the willingness to let go of destructive patterns. In modern terms, this story resonates with those who struggle with their past mistakes or feel trapped by their circumstances. It serves as a reminder that with effort and guidance, transformation is within reach. The parable of the mustard seed offers another profound lesson, focusing on the universality of suffering and the importance of acceptance. In this story, a grieving mother approaches the Buddha, desperate for a way to bring her dead child back to life. Overcome with sorrow, she pleads for a miracle. Rather than dismissing her grief or offering false hope, the Buddha gives her a task: to find a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death. The woman eagerly sets out on her quest, knocking on every door in the village, At each home, she asks if they have been untouched by death, only to find that every family has its own story of loss and sorrow. Some have lost children, others parents or spouses, and some have endured multiple tragedies. As the woman listens to these stories, she begins to realize that her pain is not unique. Death and suffering are universal experiences, part of the fabric of life. This realization helps her to come to terms with her own loss, not by diminishing her grief, but by helping her understand that it is a shared human experience. The lesson of the mustard seed is both simple and profound. Suffering is an inevitable part of life, and no one is exempt from it. This understanding can help us let go of our attachments to permanence and the illusion that life should be free of pain. In modern life, we often struggle with the idea of loss, whether it's the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or the loss of a dream or goal. Society frequently encourages us to avoid or suppress grief, to move on quickly, or to seek distractions. However, the story of the mustard seed teaches us that accepting suffering as a natural part of life can bring peace and healing. For example, consider someone who loses a job they have worked at for years. The initial reaction might be one of shock, anger, or despair. They may feel as though their world has been turned upside down, and they may cling to the idea of returning to what they once had. However, by reflecting on the truth of impermanence and understanding that loss is a common experience, they can begin to let go of their attachment to that job and find a new path forward. This doesn't mean the pain disappears, but it becomes more bearable when viewed through the lens of shared human experience. Both of these stories also emphasize the importance of compassion, not just toward others, but also toward oneself. In the case of Angulimala, the Buddha's compassion was the catalyst for his transformation. By treating Angulimala with kindness and seeing his potential for change, the Buddha showed him a path out of his cycle of violence. Similarly, the grieving mother in the parable of the mustard seed found healing not through the eradication of her pain, but through the compassionate acknowledgement of her suffering and that of others. In practical terms, these stories encourage us to cultivate compassion in our daily lives. When we encounter someone who has made mistakes or is struggling, we can choose to respond with understanding rather than judgment. For example, if a coworker acts out of frustration or anger, instead of reacting defensively, we might pause to consider what challenges they might be facing. This shift in perspective can defuse conflict and create opportunities for connection and support. The stories also teach us to extend this same compassion to ourselves. Many people carry guilt or shame over past actions, believing they are beyond redemption or unworthy of kindness. The story of Angulimala reminds us that no one is beyond the possibility of change. By practicing self-compassion, we can begin to forgive ourselves for our mistakes and take steps toward growth and healing. In the parable of the mustard seed, the grieving mother's journey reflects the healing power of sharing and listening. Modern psychology recognizes the value of storytelling and community in processing grief. When people share their experiences of loss and hear others' stories, they often find solace in knowing they are not alone. This communal aspect of healing is deeply rooted in the Buddha's teaching that suffering is universal and that understanding this can foster a sense of connection rather than isolation. These lessons are timeless because they address fundamental aspects of the human condition: the capacity for transformation, the inevitability of suffering, and the power of compassion. They remind us that while life is often unpredictable and challenging, there is always a path forward. Whether we are seeking redemption, coping with loss, or simply trying to navigate the complexities of life, the wisdom in these stories offers guidance and hope. In today's world, where people often feel overwhelmed by stress, loss, or regret, these teachings provide practical tools for finding peace. By embracing mindfulness, practicing compassion, and accepting the impermanence of life, we can approach challenges with resilience and clarity. The stories of Angulimala and the mustard seed are not just relics of the past, they are living lessons that continue to inspire and guide those who seek to live with greater awareness, understanding, and kindness. The art of letting go, as taught by the Buddha, is not about turning away from life or renouncing its beauty, but about living fully and freely without the chains of attachment. It is an approach that invites us to embrace impermanence, to recognize that nothing in life is fixed or permanent, and to find peace in this acceptance. At its core, letting go is about releasing the desires and attachments that bind us to suffering, allowing us to experience the present moment with clarity and equanimity. Desire and attachment are deeply ingrained in human nature. We often tie our happiness to external circumstances, achieving a promotion, maintaining a relationship, or acquiring material possessions. While these things can bring temporary satisfaction, they are impermanent by nature. The joy they bring is fleeting, and when they inevitably change or fade, we are left clinging to the memory of what once was or yearning for what might have been. This clinging creates a cycle of suffering that perpetuates feelings of dissatisfaction and longing. The Buddha's teachings offer a way to break free from this cycle. The Four Noble Truths provide a framework for understanding suffering and its causes. First, life involves suffering, or dukkha, which is an unavoidable part of existence. This suffering arises from our attachments and desires, as outlined in the second truth. The third truth offers hope. Suffering can end when we let go of these attachments. Finally, the fourth truth provides a practical path, the Noble Eightfold Path, for achieving this liberation. Walking the Noble Eightfold Path is an essential practice in the art of letting go. This path encourages us to cultivate right view, right intention, and right mindfulness, among other principles. For example, right view involves seeing the world as it truly is, understanding the impermanence of all things, and recognizing that clinging to impermanent phenomena only leads to suffering. Right intention encourages us to act with kindness and compassion, prioritizing the well-being of others rather than selfish desires. Right mindfulness helps us stay present, observing our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. One practical way to embrace the art of letting go is by cultivating mindfulness in daily life. Mindfulness allows us to observe our attachments and desires without judgment. For instance, imagine feeling frustrated because a project at work didn't go as planned. Instead of dwelling on the disappointment or blaming others, mindfulness helps you recognize the transient nature of the situation. You can observe your emotions, acknowledge them, and then let them pass without allowing them to define your experience. This practice not only reduces stress, but also fosters resilience in the face of challenges. Letting go does not mean detachment in the sense of apathy or indifference. It is not about shutting ourselves off from the world or avoiding relationships and experiences. Instead, it is about engaging with life wholeheartedly while maintaining an awareness of its impermanence. For example, in a relationship, letting go might mean loving someone without trying to control them or fearing their departure. It involves appreciating the time you share while understanding that change is inevitable. This perspective allows for deeper, more meaningful connections, free from the anxiety of clinging. The concept of non-self, or anatta, is another cornerstone of letting go. We often identify strongly with our thoughts, emotions, and roles in life, believing that they define who we are. However, the Buddha teaches that the self is an illusion, a collection of ever-changing processes rather than a fixed, permanent entity. By understanding this, we can loosen our attachment to ego-driven desires and fears. For instance, if someone criticizes you, you might feel hurt because it threatens your sense of self. But by recognizing that the self is not fixed or permanent, you can view the criticism with greater detachment, understanding that it does not define your worth. The art of letting go extends beyond major life events to the small, everyday moments that shape our experiences. Consider the example of waiting in traffic. Many people become impatient or angry in such situations, clinging to the desire to reach their destination quickly. Letting go in this context means accepting the situation as it is, without resisting or wishing it were different. By doing so, you can transform a potentially stressful experience into an opportunity for mindfulness and presence. Letting go is also about releasing the past and the future. Many people carry the weight of past regrets or worry excessively about what lies ahead. These attachments to what cannot be changed or controlled rob us of the present moment. For instance, replaying a mistake you made years ago or obsessing over a future event prevents you from fully experiencing the here and now. The art of letting go invites us to forgive ourselves, release the past, and trust in the flow of life. Practicing gratitude is a powerful way to reinforce the art of letting go. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have, fostering a sense of contentment and abundance. By appreciating the present moment and the simple joys of life, we can let go of the constant yearning for more. For example, instead of fixating on not having the newest gadget or the perfect job, gratitude encourages us to cherish a sunny day, a kind word from a friend, or the taste of a favorite meal. These small moments of appreciation help ground us in the present and reduce the pull of attachment. The art of letting go also has profound implications for how we approach success and failure. Society often equates success with personal worth, leading to intense pressure to achieve and fear of falling short. Letting go of this attachment allows us to pursue goals with a sense of freedom rather than fear. For instance, an athlete who lets go of the need to win can focus on the joy of playing the game, which often enhances performance and satisfaction. Similarly, letting go of the fear of failure allows us to take risks and embrace opportunities for growth. The ultimate goal of letting go is not to escape life, but to engage with it more fully and authentically. By freeing ourselves from the chains of attachment, we create space for true freedom, compassion, and inner peace. Letting go allows us to respond to life's challenges with clarity and wisdom rather than reacting out of fear or desire. It enables us to find joy in the present moment, even amidst uncertainty and change. As we reflect on the art of letting go, it is worth asking ourselves what we are holding on to that causes us suffering. Perhaps it is a relationship, a goal, or an identity we are unwilling to release. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means releasing our attachment to outcomes and embracing life as it unfolds. By doing so, we can live with greater freedom, resilience, and peace. Buddha's teachings remind us that the journey of letting go is not a destination, but an ongoing practice. Each day presents opportunities to let go of a fleeting frustration, an unrealistic expectation, or a lingering regret. As we take these small steps, we move closer to a life of true freedom and fulfillment. The art of letting go is a transformative practice, one that invites us to live with greater awareness, compassion, and joy, unburdened by the weight of attachment and desire. So, what are you holding on to that's weighing you down? As we've explored today, the art of letting go isn't about detaching from life, it's about living it more freely, without the burden of unnecessary desires and attachments. We've walked through the teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, and the profound concept of non-self. We've shared stories like Angulimala's redemption and the grieving mother who sought a mustard seed, only to discover the universality of suffering. These timeless lessons remind us that while pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and that freedom lies in our ability to release what we cannot control. Now, imagine applying this wisdom to your life. How would it feel to embrace the present moment, to find peace in simplicity, and to let go of the things that no longer serve you? The journey of letting go isn't easy, but it's transformative. Each small step you take creates more space for freedom, joy, and compassion. If this video has sparked a new perspective or inspired you in any way, please hit that like button. It really helps us grow and reach more people who might need this message. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who could use a little peace and wisdom today. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Our channel is all about exploring timeless truths, practical wisdom, and personal growth. We're so glad you're here, and we'd love for you to join us on this journey. Thank you for watching, for being open to new ideas, and for taking this time to reflect on life's deeper meaning. Until next time, remember, letting go isn't about loss, it's about making space for freedom. See you in the next video.